welcome to this program on IFLA, International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. We are very fortunate to have here a guest from the IFLA itself, and he is a person who has been involved with IFLA activities directly for the last 10 years. He is looking after the professional activities. He is the coordinator of professional activities. We have with us Mr. Sheard Kopman, and today he will be discussing and presenting to us the various activities and programs of IFLA, and we will be having a discussion with him on the various aspects of IFLA. I would request him to start with a brief introduction of IFLA. Mr. Kopman.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. IFLA, as you said, is the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. The institutions you don't hear in the acronym, but believe me, it would be too long. We are an old organization, 80 years old, and I hope that I can make clear that our ideas and the ideas of our membership are very, very youthful and young. It's a federation that was founded in 1927, and it developed through the years through decades of slow growth until the 1980s, when the growth was really speeding. And we now have currently between 16 and 1700 members in more than 150 countries worldwide. And the main categories of members are associations, library associations, national library associations. So, for example, the Indian Library Association is a member, but the American Library Association is another member, which in itself has more than 60,000 members. So associations, and on the other hand, that's the largest category, institutions. And institutions is a chic word for libraries, library faculties, public libraries, scientific libraries, all sorts of libraries, departmental, etc. And then there's a small category. It is not to be nullified, but it's a small category of personal affiliates and student affiliates.
Okay, fine. So these are the different kinds of members that we have, and we know that India also has a representation there.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's the Indian Library Association, and also a number of institutions like IGNU,
Yeah.
Indira Gandhi National Open University Library is one member,
Yeah.
to mention an example.
Yeah, fine. Would you like to tell a little bit about the objectives of the organization?
Right. Through the years, IFLA has always stood for the right to free access to information. That is really our core business. That's really what we all do it for. And in order to provide free access, we think that the best condition is that we have a strong, well-educated and well-organized profession of library and information workers. And to that end, we stand for developing good standards, guidelines, best practice to be shared among librarians worldwide, because only with very good professionals you can live up to the duty of giving all access to information. And that information can be, of course, public information, government information, corporate information, even information for your leisure, community information, the things you need for your work, but also for your leisure to have the joy of reading, information in all sorts for everyone to access. That is what we go for. And we think that libraries are the main hubs, the main organizations that can provide that information, rather than we think, than the post office or the supermarket around the corner, where you sometimes in some countries see computer terminals where you can access the internet. That's fine, but the help and the assistance and the guidance of professionally educated librarians is lacking.
So for that free access to information, something very special that IFLA is doing?
Yes, free access to information is a challenge in many countries, as we know. I don't have to mention the countries here, but There are countries worldwide. You remember that we have 150 countries where we have our members, and many of these countries have systems, political systems or society, cultural systems that prevent people, civilians, from free access to information. That's where we go to, and we try and work with governmental institutions with the help of our librarians to get better circumstances and to fight for access to information. It's a slow process, but the small steps needed, the many small steps, that is what we go for. That can be with the help of training, with workshops, with best practice. People can learn from each other, and so can librarians, of course, worldwide. We try and provide the systems, the educational systems, and the best practices in the setting of workshops, for instance, or courses to share.
What about the structure of the organization? A little bit.
A complex organization, which I think is inevitable for a world-spanning, a global organization. There is all members are entitled to become members of one of our sections. We've got 45 in place, 45 sections grouped into 8 divisions. I will not annoy you with mentioning all the divisions, but just mention a few examples of sections. It's a very broad spectrum. It ranges from libraries for the blind, professional groups dealing with that type of libraries and library work, parliamentary libraries, IT, cataloging, not to forget. Catalog people would be not pleased if I would not mention them. Interlending and document supply, very range. Public libraries, academic libraries. And then, last but not least, we have 3 regional sections, one for Africa, one for Latin America and Caribbean, and one dealing with the big part of the world, Asia and Oceania. I think it's half of the globe, and it's not arrogant. You should not take it arrogant that we divide the world in those pieces, but India, situated in Asia, members from India and surrounding countries here are automatically members of our Asia and Oceania section. Okay. All those sections are governed by standing committees, so the steering group. Those are elected people. IFLA is a democratic organization, and not only the standing committee members are elected, but also every 2 years we elect our president and members of the board, the governing board of IFLA. I think that is enough for the professional structure, because there is a professional committee and many more committees, but that is much more for a nice schedule or a diagram.
So I think the structure has been based because the organization is responsible for the overall development of librarianship around the globe.
That is right.
So that's where they have thought of the structure.
Yeah.
Various activities, type of libraries, and the different type of professionals that we have.
Exactly, and you see reflected in the structure the history of information development. I should like to say. It came in steps. This structure, of course, was not in place in 1927, but I think only during the 1990s it came to full growth. And it will not surprise you that we are in a continuous process of reorganization. We expect to have a slightly different structure soon, within the next 1 or 2 years. And again, I won't annoy you with telling how we go back from 8 divisions to 5, etc., etc. You believe that. We don't have 2 hours here for our program.
You said it is a 80-year-old organization, and after 1980 it has been very actively, there has been some reorganization. Could you just tell a little bit about that? Yes,
in the first place, I think in the 70s IFLA allowed institutions as members, and that provided a big growth. Before it was used mainly associations, so a small association of associations. Later, when institutions were allowed as members, it grew in sheer numbers, and then during the 80s, a lot of stress was put on working for the developing world, the third world, as some like to call it. These are terms that are, internationally accepted, I think. And we saw a large growth of activities, especially aimed at developing countries. Cooperation between rich and poor countries, South-South development, as you and us call it, and that made the big growth during the 1980s. Really. Right. And then, of course, it will not surprise you that since we have the internet since the 1990s and the World Wide Web, it has changed the profession a lot, as all librarians know, and consequently our federation as well. There are more groups dealing with IT. IT is entering into all other fields of the profession, including our sections. Libraries for the blind that I mentioned are highly high-tech, dealing with high-tech and electronic issues. Many. And so are public libraries, and so are parliamentary libraries, etc. So I would say in the 80s, the characteristics was growth by inclusion of institutional members. In the 90s, there was the 70s, and in the 80s, the going to the developing countries, and in the 90s, since the 1990s, more technology and IT, much more.
Could you also throw some light on how it is contributing towards the development of professionals and education?
Right. In the first place, we have a special section, will not surprise you, education and training. And there's another section which deals more with on-the-job training, workplace learning, as it is called. Now, apart from sections, the education issue pervades all other issues. Is a cutting cross. It's cutting across most of the other sections. I was referring to training in the field of free access to information. But there's also training for public librarianship, and there is lots of cataloging and metadata work training. Training and education pervade all the work of the whole federation. There's one thing I wanted to put at this point, and that is that I should have said at the beginning that IFLA, the name and acronym and the notion IFLA, to most of our colleagues, professional colleagues, libraries and information workers, means the annual conference. And you say IFLA, they think of hey, that's the conference that's going to be held in Quebec this year, 2008, or unfortunately, I could not attend the IFLA conference in Durban or in Oslo or in Berlin. Yes, it's true. We go around the world with our annual conference, truly around the globe. But IFLA is much more, and that is what I try to describe: the work in our professional sections, 45 of them, and the work that our members are putting into the hundreds of IFLA issues is ongoing, the other 51 weeks of the year. So this is the thing I wanted to make clear. There's the conference, yes, truly, and we hopefully come to talk about that. But IFLA is more than a conference, the federation of all those, encompassing all those active members, activists.
Any concessions that you give for membership to students?
Yes, as I said, we have student affiliation. Students pay a number, I don't know exactly in euros, a certain amount of euros, which equals the cost we make as an organization to have them, to keep them in membership. So at no extra cost, we make them members. And for that student affiliation, they receive the normal benefits that all members get. So the IFLA journal, discount, strong discount on conference attendance, discount on professional publications, etc., etc.
You mentioned about IFLA journal. A
Yes.
word or two about the different publications of it.
Yes, we have the journal coming out 4 times a year. It's a truly professional journal with partly papers and contributions stemming from our annual conference, but also free, how do you call it in English? Freely submitted, apart from conference publications. It comes out 4 times a year, and it's now in its 35th year, I think. Apart from that, we have a blooming series of professional publications, IFLA publications. It's published 6 parts a year, 6 volumes a year, since many, many years, I think 2 or 3 decades or so. They're published by our special publisher, KG Zauer in Munich, and they have worldwide distribution. I have the honor of being the series editor. Next to that, we have professional reports, which we publish ourselves in our headquarters in The Hague, on a very, very cheap basis, and we make them available in electronic form. And those are the very specialized things for which it is very difficult to find large print runs and large distribution numbers. An example is professional publications dealing with libraries for hospital provision of library services to hospitalized people, or to people suffering from dementia, or for prisoners, things like that. There are niches in the market, but we think of them. Our sections pay attention to the needs, the special needs, and share information about how to deal with these small but significant categories of readers.
Okay.
Just a few examples. And not to forget, of course, all the publications that are made through our website, IFLAnet only. There are lots of guidelines and many, many translations. I think we have translations of the main guidelines in 30, 40 different languages sometimes. An example is the public library guidelines. We have drawn up, IFLA has drawn up together with UNESCO. They are now available in at least 30, if not 35 languages in full, including, I think, 15 or 16 of the 19 Indian languages. We have them in, well, you know the Indian languages better than I do, but they're there. And that goes for the many manifestos and guidelines on different subjects we publish. Very often our friends out there and our colleagues throughout the world help us to translations in Arabic and in Chinese and into Amharic or Swahili and Danish and Dutch, etc.
So this shows the international character of the organization.
Absolutely, and it also shows, if I may, the language issue.
Yeah.
In information provision and information distribution, language is perhaps an even more more important barrier than sometimes politics is,
yeah,
or wealth or income. Language is the main barrier for good sharing of information. It needs a lot of work to bring the various language communities together.
Yeah.
Within IFLA now we have since recently 7 working languages. We used to have 5. There were English, French, German, Russian and Spanish. And recently the governing board decided to add Arabic and Chinese. And this is not something that you can accomplish overnight, of course, having the complete website in Arabic and Chinese, or even in French or Spanish. But we're working constantly with the various language communities to help representatives of those language communities during our annual conference by providing simultaneous interpretation of the main sessions and by translating our core documents, the key papers, the most important publications.
This is another good sign that you have added 2 more languages. Wish Hindi also comes sometime.
Yes, and the Portuguese say, why not Portuguese, you know, and Japanese and yes, we would love to. We would love to. But can you imagine the issue of having contacts with the communities in Brazil, you know, to get Portuguese, or with Indian colleagues and friends to have Hindi?
Yeah.
It is, I think, feasible in a future, hopefully, but step by step.
That's very important. So, Mr. Koopman, I think it was quite interesting, and it would be very useful for our viewers with this brief chat on IFLA. And really, we are very thankful and hope to see you once more again here and have.
Thank you very much for being in your program. Thank you.